All right, so this signing period of early signing period kind of to me is it's kind of like halftime right now. So you know it's kind of strange. Last time being at this level as a head coach, we didn't have this. So and then we didn't sign as many guys at FAU at mid-year, so as they do up here, kind of waiting for guys to trickle down. So like I said, this is kind of halftime here, so it's kind of strange having a press conference like instead of the end of the game at halftime. So we signed some good players today that we're excited about. But we've only been here a week, and so just like our staff, we said we're going to work fast, but we're also going to work smart. So with that, there's still a number of kids that we're on, some that have already said they're coming that want to develop relationships, so they're going to push back to February, and some other kids that we're on that maybe we're going places that have pushed back to February to give us a chance, because we only had one weekend, and some kids are still, already had that weekend filled, so we weren't able to get, to everybody. So when we start back up again here, would obviously like to have our staff in place, to be full strength, and then go finish out the second half. Just like you can't win the game in the first or second quarter, can't win recruiting yet. So, we'll have a lot of work to do. Excited about, talked to a lot of kids over the last 2 days about waiting, and, push them back to February and finish really strong. So the guys that did sign today, it's a little bit defense heavy. When we came in, we don't know the current roster great, and so we'll always try to sign the best players regardless of position, but especially in our first year as we look at things, and so inform some guys that maybe had scholarships here before that we were going a different direction out of fairness to them. I think that's the best thing to do instead of just keeping kids that were coming for a previous staff and they don't fit and they're wanting to transfer in a year or two. So, questions?
Lane, if you don't mind, I'd like to get you to comment, one, on your quarterback commit, Cade Renfro, and exactly what you saw out of him, and then the kind of whirlwind recruitment of Tobias Braun, the offensive lineman that came in here uncommitted this weekend and committed today and signed today.
Well, first, Cade, I think, is a really good player that's got a big upside, and we just at that position, especially, just like all of them, we looked, we started from scratch, and just thought that he's got a really big upside. Someone that's not played a ton of football, still maturing from a growth standpoint, growing into his body, but very competitive, really good touch on the ball. So I think he has a bright future. Tobias, again, like I said, we're kind of scrambling here with 1 week to go, but this was somebody that two coaches on our staff knew from before, from Florida State and UCF. So I'd never talked to him, I never met him, but he had a great weekend here. And what I kind of learned, what everybody says, for the most part, if you get the kids here, if you can get them on campus here, they really enjoy even though school is out, they really enjoy it, and you end up getting a lot of them. So a lot of credit to the staff here that was in place, not just the coaching staff, but around the building, because they knew a lot more than we did, for us few new guys, and so those guys and girls really carried us through.
Lane, over here, you mentioned your coaching staff. Where would you sort of say that is right now in terms of approaching completion?
I think we got a ways to go. We still need to figure out defensive coordinator. Mac's definitely one of those candidates, and when you figure out that, then you can figure out the rest. So, I always try to hire the coordinators first, and then interview the other guys, whether it's outside guys or guys that are here. Any guys that are still on the staff will be the first ones that have first chance to interview, and we'll go from there.
Lane, you talked a little bit about scrambling, trying to get to know these guys and the personnel you have. What do you say to these guys who maybe you're meeting blind, maybe you haven't gotten to see too much of them, and how do you kind of sell them on a program that you're as new to as they would be?
Yeah, they know it better than me. Most of these kids, especially in the South, they've visited here 10 times, and been to a million games and junior days and all that stuff. So they already knew about Ole Miss, and a number of them wanted to come here. And, you know, I didn't really talk that much about that. I talked more about what we're planning on doing, you know, with our, you know, whether it's scheme or your position, how we coach that position, or people who've coached that position before, you know, and just kind of combine the two.
In Lane over here, you mentioned with the staff not being completely filled out, is there an element of just kind of slowing down and trying to do it better long term as opposed to just bringing in kids just to get the numbers?
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, doing this a long time now, you know, probably would have handled that different maybe 10 years ago and worried about where our rankings were. You know, we had a number of kids that we could have signed today that, you know, were wanting to commit here, and we said, you know, either we weren't going to take them, or we said, hey, we got to get to know you first, so push back till February, you know, because like I said, we're at halftime. You know, these rankings today and all that stuff don't matter anyway. So, you know, this will be a really big January, and I think that you'll end up seeing some guys signed here that, you know, aren't even on the radar right now here.
Lane, over here, we lost 3 really good ones up front on defense. Is that it's a position of need going forward?
Yeah, it is for sure, and there's some really good ones still left out there, and so that will be a very big emphasis, you know, in this next, you know, finishing the class off.
Piggybacking on that a little bit, Lane, is the portal somewhere that there might be a defensive line candidate for you as well?
Sure. You know, we'll look at everything. You know, college football now from a head coaching perspective really is more like the NFL. I think, you know, managing rosters, you know, it's like in the NFL, you got the draft, you got, you know, young free agents, old veteran free agents, you know, your own guys, restricted free agents, and now college to become like that because you got high school kids, you got junior college kids, you got 4-year transfer kids, and you got grad transfer kids. So, you know, you really got to manage the roster, and it's great, you know, because, okay, there's all these great grad transfers out there. Well, you're using an initial scholarship for 1 year. You know, it's like putting a lot of money into, you know, an old veteran that you're only going to get it for a year. So you just got to do a good job of managing it, and we'll look at all, you know, all aspects to improve our team.
Lane, you mentioned it only being a week and a half and everything happened so fast. Did you have an idea of how many guys might sign today or a goal? How did you kind of approach that coming into today?
I didn't have any numbers at all. It really was, hey, make sure we sign good players, and if that's 2 players, it's 2 players. You know, we weren't going to reach. I think that once the staff's in place, I think that a lot of kids will reach out to us and want to come here, and, you know, especially once we're able to establish relationships with them. So, you know, a lot of these kids came here because of what was already in place here because of Ole Miss, and not because of us. I think the next time around it'll be more of a combination, you know, in February.
Lane, we've got 11 on the list that have signed today. I know you can't comment specifically, but are you expecting any more?
Yes. Yeah, I would anticipate at least 1 more today, yes.
Lane, talking this morning with Oxford tight end J.J. Pegues' parents, he said you guys never even really reached out since you were been here. Talked to some people within the program that kind of contradicted that. What was your opinion on that situation with J.J.?
I mean, he was at the All-Star game, so, you know, can't go see him. We tried everything possible. I talked to his coach, you know, and they said, you know, his coach tried to put him on the phone and said that he wasn't interested. He'd already made a decision. You know, he was supposed to be up here, I think, the first morning. I think it was the first morning that we were here, you know, and then didn't show up. So you can only do what the rules allow.
Piggybacking off that a little bit, Lane, just there were a couple of high-profile kids from the state who chose to go elsewhere. What will your emphasis be on in-state versus trying to get a better fit maybe from out-of-state?
You know, we're going to sign the best players to win games. Now, if it comes down to where they're equal, we're going to choose the in-state player. But, you know, we're not going to sit here and say, hey, we're going to sign all Mississippi kids. You know, if we got great players that want to come here, and really national programs that win for a long period of time, they recruit nationally. So we're going to recruit all over the place and find players, and, you know, if it's even, we'll take local kids. You know, but this is much different than, you know, taking, you know, the 2, you know, like Tennessee or USC before, because there was no mid-year signing. So we had till February. I think our first year at USC, even with, you know, the probation or the hearings coming up, I think we signed the #1 class in the country. If I remember, Tennessee, we signed a top 10 class, even though we were only there for like a month or 2. But this is a whole other animal. You got 1 week, you know, in 1 weekend, so it's a lot more difficult, obviously.
Coach, on the roster management issue, where will the focal point be in this late signing period, position-wise?
Well, I think, like I said, we'll go to sign the best players, but we've got to get defensive linemen. We've got to continue to get defensive backs, and then get special players on offense, you know, especially at receiver.
We haven't gotten a chance to ask you just about the coaches you have hired on your staff. Can you kind of go into detail about what you liked about the guys you went in and hired?
Well, I think that, you know, like I said, hiring the coordinators first, and so we were able to do that on offense, which allowed us to hire offensive coaches. You know, another one that'll probably be announced here today. So just wanted to find guys that really were good coaches that fit really well. You know, not worried about big resumes that, oh, we got to go hire, you know, all these big name coaches, you know, maybe like we did at Tennessee, you know, and just hire the best teachers and the best guys that are going to, you know, develop players. So excited about the guys we have so far. We got a lot of work to do. It's kind of like our recruiting class, similar.